Alrighty, well, it is great to meet you, everyone. I am Sanker Jr, Director of AI and Business Development. I am working and have been working with dozens of companies in the biotech space to get them ready for AI, deploying AI, AI policies, security, implementation, training, all of that kinds of stuff. So that is me and Jude.
Hi, I'm Jude. I'm the founder of baobab.bio, and we're largely working more on the model creation side. But to do that, we use AI every day. And additionally, I'm consulting for a small biotech on how to use Cloud Code.
And today, we will be talking about AI fatigue. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard a lot about AI lately, right? Probably a little bit too much sometimes, yet you're going to hear about it again. Hopefully, this time it's going to be a slight bit more grounded in reality, and we're going to walk you through some practical tips for using it, a little bit of a walkthrough of what it is, and what's maybe hype, and what's maybe actually useful, and something you can take home with you. So, what do you see when you see AI fatigue? What does that mean to you?
I think there's just an overwhelming volume of information about what these systems are, what they can do, and especially the term an agent is especially overloaded. And you see all these companies every single day. What are they selling you? What are you actually buying? What is the component of the product? But to understand that, I think we need to go over how do they work and how do you get the most out of the simplest systems that you can use, the chat interface.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that people have had center around non-determinism, not getting the same thing every time, it not being reliable when you try to do a similar task with a different data set. That's pretty frustrating, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced hallucinations. That's probably one of the biggest words in AI. And why does that happen? What is this non-determinism, and why does it have hallucinations?
Well, language models they're statistical models of language. That's what they begin as. And you don't need to know what that means. You just need to know that a non-deterministic language model would just output, I am Borg, over and over and over again, no matter what question you ask, and that's not very useful. So the non-determinism is inherent. You don't want it to ask it to flip a coin and get heads every time. So the question is, how can we take these fundamentally non-deterministic things and get robust and reliable output? And the first step, the first pre-flight check all of you should be using is using the best model available and using the thinking mode.
Yeah, I think first, a question. Who here is familiar with, I guess, hands for using ChatGPT? Okay, hands for Claude. Both hands for both? Just kidding, it's okay, you don't have to. But, so in ChatGPT, how many people have actually gone up to the upper left and clicked the model dropdown and they select the different options? Anyone who didn't raise their hand has homework. That is one of the best things that you can do for increasing the quality of outputs for your models. Same thing with Claude. Anyone familiar with the difference between Opus and Sonnet? That is something that is worth taking a look at. I would say right now, if you see Sonnet by default, give a try to Opus. What are these different models? Why would I choose a thinking model over something that's just going to give me an immediate answer? Isn't a faster answer better?
Well, let's see. I'm going to ask everybody a question, and I want you to respond immediately if you'd like to participate. Don't think about it. As soon as I stop, give me your answer. What do cows drink?
Water.
Okay, well, we got some clever people in the audience, but a lot of you said milk. All of you have hallucinated. To overcome this fundamental bias and non-determinism, you have to give the model some ability to think. And that largely just means letting them babble to themselves until they come to a conclusion. They might literally say, well, milk, wait, no, oh my God, water. And then you get your final response, which is water. And yeah, and the larger models additionally, if you look at Sonnet and Opus, larger models are more sample efficient, they're subjectively brighter, and they're more effective at a given task. So for ChatGPT, it's the same base model for pretty much everything they offer. You should be using Thinking or Quell, almost never instant. But for Claude, generally you're going to want to go for Opus instead of Sonnet. That's their largest model.
That's we got some psychedelic backgrounds.
Atmospheric.
So with this, you might ask yourself, the model's thinking, it's like us, it's human. Wait, what is thinking? All thinking is with a language model is it's talking to itself. You can't see it unless you maybe click into the like thinking details. But it's just saying, it seems like the user is asking for this, and maybe they mean this, or maybe they mean that. They probably mean this because the other thing didn't make sense. Turning on thinking allows it to reason with itself a little bit and help come through to a better answer. So I would highly implore you to play with that. First tip, number one, go home, know the difference between thinking, non-thinking for ChatGPT. And then for Claude, make sure that you go in and you select try Opus, and then with Opus, make sure that thinking is on. It's a toggle in Claude. So thinking enabled, you'll see drastically different results. And so when you are using these tools, when you're executing queries into these systems, you can just say, make me the best slide deck in the universe, right? And then it's gonna do a really good job because you said the best slide deck, so it's gonna be the best.
Not quite. So the problem is, there's the old saying that, what is it? A donkey is a horse designed by a committee. When you say make a better slide deck, Claude doesn't know who you are. It is optimizing for something that looks like the best slide deck to some weird mush of the average person. It doesn't know what better looks like to you. And so it can seem like it's working because most people probably can get better slides by asking, make it better. But there are a lot of things you can do to narrow down from the space of what better could mean to what better means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And specificity is key. You are what makes a language model excellent. Why? Because you're the expert. The language models are the generalists. Everyone's selling these crazy things. They're telling you AI is going to take over everything. We don't need to do anything because we have AI. And one day it's maybe, maybe not. But the reality is, right now, these are general systems that are compressions of human knowledge, but they're not specialists. You all are the specialists. When you give your background, when you give the information that you distinctly have as an individual in the field, that's how you really extract the value out of it. Now, you can't always supply all of the information to a model at a given time. And sometimes you don't know what the model doesn't know. So how can you get around that?
One of the most effective techniques, and the sort of first step after people upgrade to thinking models and using these things robustly, is having it interview you. At the end of whatever prompt you want it to do, you want it to upgrade your slide, say, list out all the current assumptions you'll make, every sensible default you'll implement, and then ask me any blocking questions. And the benefit of doing this in Claude especially is that it'll ask you the questions interactively. It'll give you a drop-down menu, much easier than ChatGPT, you have to type it out yourself. But in both of these cases, that narrows down the space of, well, what could these slides do to be better from the generic version, which is going to be slide. The technical term is mode collapse, like it's a mathematically quantifiable thing, to the specific universe of possible people who could want their slides to be better in specific ways. Now it's you, and it'll execute when it feels ready.
Yeah, and when you interview yourself with AI, you're filling in the gaps in its knowledge. You're seeing the assumptions that it's making, and you're getting a better result. Now, say you made a query, it gave you a bad result, maybe you didn't ask it to interview you. You screwed? I don't think so. Follow up in the chat. A lot of people think that when you get a bad result, that's just it. It's not going to go any further. Or you just say to the model, you did it wrong, do it better. Have you ever gotten that feedback? Was that helpful? No. Maybe get some information about what's wrong. Give it feedback specifically about what went wrong, and then ask, how can you better do this? Do you need more tools? Can I give you better information? There's a lot of interaction and interplay that I think people sometimes miss because it's a non-obvious bit of advice.
And not only that, but once you've kind of narrowed down, maybe you've had a session where you've made fantastic slides, or whatever you're working on, data analysis in a way that you feel really happy about. You can always ask it to save a summary as a text file, then you just have that on hand and you can upload that to future sessions. And that is a huge unlock if you're using the web interface. And it's substantially better than another mistake people make a lot, which is asking many unrelated questions over and over again. If you've used a context window for 2 weeks for therapy, then ask for dishwasher instructions, it's going to be really confused
Why do you need dishwasher instructions? How is this part of the crisis? So whenever you have something new to ask, just ask, open a new context window, 100%.
I want to just build on that. There is a common misconception, and I'm not going to make anyone raise hands, but if there was an idea that these models are learning from you when you're talking to them, they are. Now, they're remembering things you talk about in chat, and if you have memory enabled in those systems, maybe it'll save a few details. I work at Acme Bio. I like long walks on the beach. I enjoy pizza for lunch, but it's not functionally learning. It's not actually changing what it is as a system. It's just adding some stuff on about you. So that means that these need to have mechanisms added on. You need to give it information. And that context, those summaries, that work that you've done in that window, don't lose that. And how can we avoid losing those things, those text files? What do I do with this summary?
Well, just keep them wherever you like and upload them as you see fit. Part of this workflow is learning how to take things and make them composable to you. And one of the ways to make it naturally composable, that's now a universal standard across agents, is what's called skills. All skills are just instructions and tools. And all the major agents, or at least Claude, I believe ChatGPT as well, can now make their own skills. So if you don't want to save a text file and reuse it, say, turn this into a skill, that effectively just makes it a text file it has on hand with a nice pretty label so it knows where to look.
And you might ask yourself, what's an agent? Does anyone have any ideas about what an agent is? You've heard it online. Maybe it's like a thing that thinks. An agent is a new kind of AI, right? It's an AI that does its own work. It thinks on its own. It has its own tasks. And it's an entirely different entity, right?
No. All agents are, if you're ever buying an agent, almost never will be a tweaked foundation model relative to ChatGPT or Claude. In my view, what an agent is the foundation model, being given access to information, being given access to tools, and being potentially orchestrated, which might mean being run on a timer or being called by a different language model or some other combination of the above.
When you hear skills, it's an easy term for a text file, really. When you boil it down, you can think of it like a text file, maybe sometimes a few text files and some scripts, but it's just words. And when you're using those, you are importing that into the model, and it's able to use those skills to do things and follow instructions that might not be obvious to it. It's a way to capture your domain expertise. Tools, I mean, think of it like your cell phone in your pocket, or a phone on the table in the desk where you work. Your computer is a tool. You have a lot of different tools at your disposal. When you give a tool to an agent, you're giving it some way to interact with either the outside world, a website, maybe an API. Tools are atomic units of interaction that these models can use. So these things sound crazy. They sound scary, they sound imposing, but what it really boils down to is you're just using that main ChatGPT interface at its core, plus some skills, plus some tools. Now, if that's all an agent is, and some run on schedules, some have recurring events, why would you ever buy someone else's agent? Why are there billion-dollar companies building agents? Isn't that kind of simple?
Well, there's a lot in domain expertise. If you're filling out a 100-page form for the FDA and you need every single minutia of every single field, yeah, you could probably compile that. But God knows how long it would take you to do that, and let alone test it to make sure that it's reliable. So even though an agentic system might at its core be a few thousand lines of code and a term paper, there can be a lot of value in that. I wouldn't discount, just because of the simplicity of what's being offered structurally, the benefit to you practically.
And with this, have you ever maybe downloaded or bought an app on your phone and it was kind of terrible? Yeah, once or twice? Yeah, I see hands. Well, not all agents are created the same. Just like how you might write a really bad agent occasionally by not giving it really specific advice, by accidentally putting the incorrect assumptions into your skill files. Hey, every Wednesday, just don't think about this thing, or this day is disproportionately more important than this day. Incorrect assumptions, bad ideas, biases can be brought into agents too. So they're not all created equal. And that's part of at least the thesis and the idea behind a lot of these companies is they've spent the time, they've spent the effort to create, to tune these things, to get them to be effective, to evaluate them. And I'm sure you've also had great apps on your phone. Well, that's when you end up with companies that make it a lot further, and they have a lot more valuation and customer base because they've taken the time to make an excellent system. How could someone get started maybe with agents if they were interested?
Well, the first step, get used to the chat window. The next step, start using skills. Already, you're largely making an agent. And now you're kind of, at this point, thrust into a huge universe of possibilities. Basically, every company in Silicon Valley is trying to sell you an agent. In my opinion, the next thing to do after you've sort of become comfortable with the chat window is go to the thing that is the worst marketing failure of the 21st century, which is Claude Code. Ignore the code entirely. Claude Code is just a version of Claude, and Codex is the version of ChatGPT that runs on your computer, or rather, the model is running externally, but it can access files on your computer. That's a security implication. And it can connect to tools and execute code. Almost any kind of agent you could build could be built in Claude Code, and you don't lose any of the question answering functionality if you switch to Claude Code. You can ask Claude Code about where to find fresh bananas. It will help you.
What I will say is, and I hate to be the Debbie Downer, please don't install Claude Code without talking to your IT department. You will get in so much trouble if you do not get approval first and foremost. These things are really powerful, but they are running on your machine. I mean, you've got what, in a lot of cases, by the blank standards, can be an intern, right? Running on your device. Ooh, I see a deck here. That looks great. Let me read that in. Oh, it has social security numbers. I might not have been supposed to do that. Well, I'm going to delete that file. No problem. I didn't see it. Ooh, that file's gone forever. So it's incredibly powerful, but in a work setting needs to go through IT and needs to be properly secured because, I mean, a whole new era of this stuff is going to be security and AI. We don't have enough time to talk about all of that, but security disclaimer aside, these things are incredibly powerful, and co-work is another great thing you can do with Claude. With the desktop app, you can click into co-work. I'm sure some people have heard of that. And they're also bringing some of these agentic systems actually to the Microsoft ecosystem. There's an early Scout system that's available, so a lot of exciting things coming in there. And that sounds kind of tricky. Is there any way that these people can, I don't know, find a way to get started with this that's approachable? Should they just open Claude Desktop? What would that look like?
So if you go to Claude Desktop, you'll see 3 tabs. You'll see the sort of main chat window, you'll see co-work, and you'll see code. And with Claude Code and co-work, co-work's really distinguished by having a lot of work connectors easily built in. So for a lot of people, that's a good place to start with building agents. But with code, a good first thing to start with is just loading it into a folder that has instructions that you know work potentially with your online web interface usage of Claude, and say, read these instructions and execute on the basis of that, or answer on the basis of that. That's kind of the hello world version. Now that you're working in a folder, every time you run it, it can write things to the folder. It can save logs of its thing, and whenever you open it again, it'll all be in the same place. Everything that's written, and it can just be text files. Creation of text file is code. People tell me they don't use code. I'm like, have you used a computer? They say yes. I say nothing has ever happened on a computer that was not code. So if you use a computer, you might have a need for a coding agent or an agent that can interact with tools in a structured way, like a coding agent.
And with all of this, I mean, so far, I hope it's become clear, yes, they're complicated, they can be imposing, they can be sometimes difficult to work with and to get right, but they're really not as mythical, I think, as a lot of companies want you to believe or would like you to buy. Because if you believe that these things are mythical, they're all capable, then you're maybe willing to spend more money on it. I would implore you to experiment with these things. You will not break them. And if you do, it might be really funny, but not too bad. So you might get it to, I don't know if anyone's tried this, you should try it when you go home. Make sure you're on instant, because if it's a thinking model, it won't do this. I should have prepared one slide for just this. Is it seahorse emoji? Yeah, if you ask an AI model if there's a seahorse emoji, at least when you're on an instant mode, it will just talk to itself for so long. Yes, it's a horse. No, it's a fish. No, it's a... These things are incredibly powerful, but they aren't perfect. And there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can use to get good at them. You absolutely can try Claude Code. You can try Cowork. You can try just the standard Claude desktop app. You can also just get a lot of value from the main chat interface. You do not have to dive this deep. We wanted you to know what is an agent, what does it do, kind of generally at a broad level, so that you know it's not scary. But you don't have to go there. You can get a lot of value at the top level. And what can people do after this, after they leave this? When they go home, they're sitting in front of their laptop and they go, I've opened Chrome.
Well, there's about an infinite number of things you could do.
That's why it's so imposing. So maybe they open ChatGPT, and what's like a first test that they could run?
Well, they could ask it to write a script. Maybe if you're doing data analysis and you have a sheet that has a consistent structure, you could have, say, make a script that analyzes this and write out a text file of all the information that we've talked about as we've been analyzing this. And you get the same input next week, you can just upload those files again. And it's already a substantial part of the way to become making an agent. Structurally, it's no different. And let's say you're approaching this and you say, Jude, I'm not daunted. I'm more experienced, I've got Claude Code. What can I do to really push? That's simple. I would say ask it for something ridiculous that you could do on a computer. Last week I asked Claude Code to clean my apartment. It said, quote, no arms. I said, but can you download connectors to the browser? And so it said, yeah, of course. So it did. I said, okay, well, get it done. And it found cleaning services available in Boston because it had a web search. It had the browser connector, so it navigated to the page. It said, I'll let you fill out your information. I pressed go, and in less than 24 hours, my apartment was clean. I didn't have to do very much apart from tell it, clean my apartment. So if you don't feel daunted, if you feel ready to dive deep into decoding agents, the number one thing I would recommend is try asking something that you know you could do on the computer and ask it to do it on the computer.
And if I had one parting bit of advice, it's experiment, be curious, and fail. It's fine. It's okay. It didn't go right. Okay, try again, experiment, see where you can get, and you're learning every time. I mean, these things are hard. I'm gonna be honest, I use them on a day-to-day basis. I still find things that are difficult about them that I'm like, wait, why? I put in the chat window explicitly to look for this target and you didn't find it. You have to experiment, you won't always get successes. Never trust the output full sail. There's no answer where you can always trust it, and I don't think it's fair to never trust it either. Find a middle ground that's comfortable for you and verify it. And one tip that I will leave you with, ask it to interview you. Really, I think that that's one of the most important things that you can try when you get home with everything that we've talked about. Hey, what am I missing? What are you assuming? And what can I tell you to help get this further along? With that, I think now's a good time for Q&A.
So you mentioned Grok, you mentioned Claude, but what about Grok?
Grok?
Yeah, that's Grok. I don't see a code version of Grok.
It's an inferior product. I wouldn't buy it.
So, yeah, it's just not as good. I think it was an attempt, this is just a personal opinion, it was an attempt for a company to be relevant in an industry that's very hot. I mean, everyone wants to be the cool kid in the block. Everyone wants to have some kind of pet that they can bring along to the show, but they missed the mark. At one point, they were state of the art. At one point, they leaped above everyone else, and then everyone kept climbing, and right now, I think other than it being useful for getting business intelligence, if you're curious to scan Twitter, sorry, I like calling it Twitter. If you're curious to scan Twitter, Grok's good for that. Other than that, there are better products. Does that answer?
Yeah, I will say it does seem like SpaceX and XAI are sort of realizing they're very good at making at deploying GPUs and not very good at making foundation models. I don't think we'll be seeing as many Groks, even as powerful as the ones before in the future. I think they're mostly going to be renting out what they've been using to train their own models.
And frankly, before I go there, Anthropic made the bet that we're going to be thrifty. We're going to be profitable. We're not going to get as many GPUs as OpenAI. They're irresponsible. They say needing more GPUs, having to rent out GPUs from SpaceX currently, which is hilarious, but we had a hand.
Let DeepSeek get here free GPUs.
Hopefully not. What's funny is the model of DeepSeek itself isn't bad, except for some very specific dates and times and occurrences that it just doesn't know about, where factually nothing happened, it claims. I digress. Please don't go to, like, if it's not paid, if you're not paying for a product and you're using it, you are the product. Especially even if you're paying for something like DeepSeek, know where your data is going, put it into reputable locations, and if you're going to a website that's not Claude.ai or ChatGPT.com or Copilot.microsoft.com, you're at risk putting your data there, I would say, even if it's an American company, right? Because frankly, a lot of these companies are vibe coding their platforms. And when you're vibe coding your platform, you don't always have the best security, so.
I will say, if you have a need for an open model to run locally or something like that, a more niche need, I would reach for Moonshot and Kimi of the Chinese models that are available as just superior models to DeepSeek's offerings at the moment.
What do you think of Copilot versus Claude? Do people that upgrade or?
They do, actually. You can use Anthropic. They call it as a sub-processor within Claude, but your IT team needs to configure that in the settings, and then Claude becomes available through Copilot. If you're interested, we are based at IT. You can find that somewhere. If you already have an IT team, frankly, we can chat with them and walk them through it, but you can use Claude within Copilot. Did we have another one?
Awesome, thank you.
You got it.
If you were to deploy an AI strategy to a company, what are some of the base models that you could look at deploying? We've got Teams, Enterprise, it's Claude, or Copilot that's already fenced in.
You know what's funny? I have an hour-long webinar that I just ran recently specifically to answer that question. Unfortunately, we have about 2 or so minutes, so I can't give you a good answer. Unfortunately, I'll give you the answer that a lot of people in computer science give. It depends what your goals are, what you're trying to do. What I can answer in a more broad sense about AI strategy, make sure that you are experimenting, you have specific results you're looking for, and you're checking in with your team. And then if you're rolling out AI to your team, train them. Because if you don't do that, the amount of companies I've been pulled in to help with, that's like, hey, I got ChatGPT, I got licenses for 75 employees, it's a lot of money, and our usage is about 2%, and everyone's saying they hate it. Well, did you train them? Oh no, it's AI, they can figure it out. If I could give you one tip in the 30 seconds I'm able to, that would be it. Make sure you train.
I would agree. I would also say that for the team I'm working with, I've adopted a bit of a different strategy insofar as, well, I've been training them obviously, but I've also said, all of you are smart, most of you have PhDs, let's try all using Claude Code. And now they run into their limits constantly. They keep having to upgrade because when you use the most powerful tool, which is Claude Code or Codex can be superior in some cases, especially for mathematics if that's relevant to you. When you use the most powerful tool, there's no gap. There's just more of a learning curve. So if you have to standardize on something and it's a team you feel like can move quickly and become accustomed to these tools quickly and is motivated to go through that adjustment period, Claude Code's not a bad option. Codex is not a bad option.
And it depends on the team.
Right. So how would you rate Copilot? When maybe you use Copilot to work, would you actually also get tool first?
Yeah.
Would you recommend switch it?
Sorry, Copilot for work, you're saying, how would you use
How
Copilot?
would you recommend? How does it compare to tool?
Copilot is suited for standard office, low to mid-tier, heavily integrated Microsoft Office solution. So if it needs your data from SharePoint, from Outlook, from the various locations from teams. If you want a secure way to access all of that data and you don't need crazy stuff, like there's no code version of Copilot, there's no Copilot code, it's going to be a very broad tool that integrates with everything in the Microsoft ecosystem in a very secure manner. If you want to be compliant, you need some form of AI that can do copywriting, it can do checking, it can do theorizing, it can draft emails. That's what it's good for. If you need heavy duty,
Data analysis.
you would want Claude. So Claude I would recommend, I say, and we are about out of time, so I have to wrap this up, but and this is also in that webinar, look, even that's telling us. In the webinar, which we'll send a maybe link if we can over, one of the things that I say is if you need premier AI, if you need the leading edge, what's happening at the frontier of development, choose either OpenAI or Anthropic. So that's ChatGPT or Claude. And then if you want some added bonus, maybe Copilot, maybe Perplexity or anything like that. But if you really want to get the most out of AI, ChatGPT or Claude.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that we've gone through our points. I was going to try and work in speech, I forgot. My collaborator, Harper Jacobs-Skolik, is here. She's a genius at agent orchestration and all manner of things. So if you have questions about that, we're both here.
And on our end, I'm from Bay State IT, Director of AI here. If you want help with your AI strategy, rolling it out at your company, need advice, want to just chat about it, frankly, I love talking about this stuff, reach out to us, we're happy to help. My last parting note is if you look around, there's a lot of little dinosaurs with dots around them. Those are all surveys. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, it would mean the world to me and it would help us make this better. It really shouldn't take long. The QR code is about to be back up on the screen, and we would love if you would fill that out. Thank you all so much for being here. It was a pleasure to be here in the room with you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.